Hello students, welcome to Legacy IAS Academy. In today's video, we are going to discuss about the major important straits of the world, and it is going to be very important for the students who are attempting prelims this year. So let us try to understand what are these straits, but before that let us understand what do we mean by the geographical term strait. Now overall, if we talk about today's world, currently we have around 200 straits around the world. Now what is a strait? In very simple terms, we can define it as a small narrow channel that connects two large land masses, two large water bodies. These water bodies generally can be seas or many times can be ocean as well. If we talk about the water movement through the straits, it happens over the surface or on the surface, and it can happen in either way. That means there is no fixed direction that water will only flow from one side of strait to the other side of strait. Now most commonly it is a narrow ocean channel is also what somehow geographers define it, that lies between two land masses, and this is something that you can see from the given picture here also. This is, we have upper land mass, then we have the lower land mass, and then between these two land masses we can see we have a shallow and narrow water channel which is connecting water bodies on both of the sides of these land masses. That is also one way of understanding the strait. Now since straits basically allows movement of the ships on the surface, however not all the straits are navigable in nature. For example, because they are either too narrow, if it is too narrow or too shallow, what happens, many times ships require a certain level of water to move across the strait, which is called as draft level. So many times the straits are very narrow or shallow, they cannot allow the movement of ships, or ships will not be able to pass through these straits, or because of an unnavigable reef, or sometimes archipelagos, sometimes shoals are there, that is rocky structures that is lying across the straits, that also causes obstruction in the path of the movement of the ships. Now let us try to understand the major straits of the world. So first strait, if you look at the map here, is the Strait of Gibraltar. Now Strait of Gibraltar, if you look at the location, it is situated between two continental land masses. In the north we have European continental landmass, and in the south we have the African landmass. If we talk about this narrow channel, as you can clearly see, it is joining two water bodies, that is Mediterranean Sea in the east, and then you have a vast Atlantic Ocean in the west. So this is the geographical location of Strait of Gibraltar. Now more specifically, this is a very narrow strait, almost it has a width of roughly 13 kilometers. And if we talk about the places that lies across the strait, so on the northern side you have a tiny place called as Gibraltar, which is a colony of United Kingdom, as well as Spain is also situated on the northern end of the strait, as we know that Spain is part of European landmass. And then we have on the south, that is on the continental landmass of Africa, a small country Morocco is situated, and also we have a small Spanish colony that is situated to the south of this particular strait. Now interesting thing about this strait is that US warplanes were forced to fly over this Strait of Gibraltar, and as protected by the 1982 conferences when it was attacking Libya in 1986, because if you look here you have the France. So France did not allow US warships to move above its airspace to basically attack Libya. Libya is a country that is situated in this region around that area. So that is when the US airplanes or warplanes have to fly over the Strait of Gibraltar. Now several times in our planet's history, Gibraltar Strait has become kind of non-navigable. The reason behind this is intense geological activity that we have witnessed in this area. Basically, if you talk about this region, we are having a tectonic plate movement that occurs here. The African plate is continuously pushing toward the Eurasian plate, that is on the north. Due to this, we have severe volcanic eruptions, landslides, earthquake, and all these kind of phenomena we have recorded here. So due to these geological activity, water could not flow between the Mediterranean and Atlantic. So the Mediterranean had dried up in the past. However, again when the water flow resumed from the Atlantic, the Mediterranean Ocean or Mediterranean Sea basically got filled up. Now the Strait of Gibraltar also keeps coming in news because, as you can see, this is a very important water channel, very important water passes that also connects the continent of Africa and Europe. And that is why this water body is also used many times for the illegal immigration from Africa to Europe, especially from the West African and the North African countries. The second important strait that we have to discuss here is Panama Canal. Basically, Panama is isthmus, and through this particular isthmus, now what is isthmus? Isthmus is just a reverse of a strait. While a strait is a narrow water body connecting two large water masses, isthmus is a narrow strip of land that connects two large land masses. So, as you can see from here, in the central part of America, this small strip of land is there that is connecting two vast land masses, that is South America to the south and North America to the north. Now, to improve the connectivity between the western coast of North America and the eastern coast of North America, a kind of canal has been dug up to the Panama Isthmus, and now it has become a kind of what we can say important strait as well. So, this is a very revolutionary kind of project because it has drastically reduced distance of almost 21,000 kilometers which ships usually has to pass before if they want to move, let us say, from the New York City all the way up to San Francisco. So, now after the opening of Panama Canal, as you can see from this map here, the ship will have to cover only 8,370 kilometers of distance. The earlier distance was almost 21,000 kilometers. That means what we can say, roughly the travel time as well as the distance that has to be covered by the ship has been reduced to 1/3 of what was required before after the construction of Panama Strait. Now, if you look at the history of this Panama Strait, it was completed in year 1914. The 50-mile long Panama Canal links Atlantic and Pacific Ocean, reduced the length of journey between the east and west coast of United States, as we have discussed, by almost 8,000 nautical miles, and we can understand the kind of trade volume this area generate by looking at this particular figure. Every day, every year, almost 12,000 ships pass through the Central American Canal, and the US retains controls of this 10-mile wide canal zone until the year 2000, when the canal is turned over to the Panamanian government. The next important strait that was used before the Panama Canal was constructed is Strait of Magellan. Now, if you look at the location here, Strait of Magellan is situated somewhere in the southernmost part of South America. And as we have discussed in the last slide, that before the Panama Canal was constructed, a ship, if it has to move from the east coast of, let us say, US to the west coast of US, it is this route the ship has to generally take. So, if you look at this particular strait, that is Strait of Magellan, the Strait of Magellan lies just north of the southern tip of South America and is surrounded by two countries. If you look at here, in the west you have Chile, and in the east you have the country that is Argentina. So, located between Argentina and Chile, a very important point you have to keep in mind, because this kind of question can be asked in prelims, that which of the straits are situated between which of the continents or which of the countries. Now, if you talk about this particular strait, obviously it is a navigable sea route in the southern Chile, and also, as you have discussed many times, strait separates two land masses also. So, similarly, the Magellan Strait separates mainland South America to the north and Tierra del Fuego, that is situated to the south. That is, this is the Tierra del Fuego region, as you can see from here, and this is very important place. If you look at the capital of Tierra del Fuego, it is Ushuaia, and Ushuaia is the place from where generally if you want to go to the expedition to the Antarctica, most of the cruise and ships are departing from here. So, this is one of the major reasons, apart from Australia, which is used as a transit point or transit port of entry for the Antarctic Peninsula. Now, the strait is considered the most important natural passage between the Atlantic and Pacific. This is again a very important point. You have to remember that unlike Panama Canal, which is a man-made project, this particular strait is a natural passage that has developed naturally due to geological and geographical disturbances. Now, in the earlier history, at the time period of California gold rush, now this was a time period when many people were rushing to the California, that is situated on the western coast of USA, basically in search of gold, and this phenomena, or this time period is called as California gold rush. So, during this gold rush in the mid 19th century, there were many regular trips between the eastern coast and San Francisco, and that is when this Magellan Strait was used very frequently by many ships and sailors. The next important strait that we have to talk about is Strait of Malacca. Now, Strait of Malacca is a very critical strait, and it is located in the South Indian Ocean, in North Indian Ocean basically, between the islands of Sumatra, that is part of Indonesia, and on the northern side, as you can see, this is the Malay Peninsula. Here you have countries such as Malaysia and Singapore is situated. So basically located in the Indian Ocean. It is basically used as a shortcut for the oil tankers largely, that is traveling between the Middle East countries such as UAE, Gulf countries, you have Bahrain is there, Qatar, Iran and all, and the oil dependent nations of the Pacific Rim, especially Japan and China. So a narrow stretch of water, if you talk about the dimension of this particular strait, it is almost 800 kilometers long and 65 to 250 kilometers wide. The location already we have talked about that. Now what this water body is connecting? So clearly, as you can see from this particular diagram, it is connecting Indian Ocean lying to the west, and basically in Indian Ocean, the part of the Indian Ocean here is called as Andaman Sea, and the South China Sea that is lying to the east, which is part of the Pacific Ocean. So Andaman Sea and South China Sea, or on a larger scale we can say it connects the Indian Ocean with the Pacific Ocean. If you look at the trade volume that passes through this particular strait, so over 94,000 vessels pass through the strait every year, and that is why it is considered as the most busiest strait in the world. And you can understand the kind of oil trade that happened through the strait by looking at this picture, that 25% of world's traded goods, including especially oil, Chinese manufactured products, coal, palm oil, as well as Indonesian coffee. For these products, this is the main transit route or transportation route. About a quarter of all oil that is carried by sea passes through this particular strait. We are talking about the volume at the world level. Mainly that is originating from the Persian Gulf region and suppliers to the Asian markets. Now the Strait of Malacca is also important because in the case of war between India and China, it is many times said that India has the power to basically close this particular strait, and if Indian Navy is able to close this particular strait, what will happen? The Chinese dependency, especially on the oil to run its industries, run its basically military industrial complex, will come to a standstill or halt. And that is why you will see that in recent years, China has started to increase its presence in the Indian Ocean also by leasing ports or by developing ports in Africa, in many Asian countries, largely to thwart such kind of activities that can be taken by the Indian Navy. Then another important straits we have in the Europe, that is Bosphorus Strait and Dardanelles Strait. If you look at the location, so basically we have first of all Black Sea, as you can see from here, and this green region is a country that is called as Turkey as its earlier name. Now new name of the same country is Turkey. So basically between Black Sea and Sea of Marmara, that is where you have the first strait, and further between Sea of Marmara to the Aegean Sea, which is part of Mediterranean Sea, you have the second strait. So basically that is what we can understand, that these both strait, Bosphorus and Dardanelles, act as a bottleneck between the Black Sea, that is Ukrainian ports are situated here, and the Mediterranean Sea. These choke points are surrounded by a landmass, that is Turkey. I am sure you know that Turkey is the country whose one part is lying in the European continent, and basically the western part is lying in the European continent and the eastern part lies in the Asian continent. And the Turkish city of Istanbul is adjacent to Bosphorus in the northeast, and the southeast strait is the Dardanelles. That means here connecting Black Sea to Sea of Marmara is Bosphorus, and connecting Sea of Marmara to Aegean Sea is where your Dardanelles Strait is situated. So collectively both these straits, since they are controlled by Turkey, they are commonly also referred as Turkish Strait, and they again are very important vital strait in the world because this connect entire Eurasian continent. Especially talk about if you go to the north further, Russia is there. So if Russia want to access oceans of the world, the only way through which the ships can enter and exit is through the Black Sea to these strait, via this strait to the Mediterranean, and again from Mediterranean they can enter to the Atlantic Ocean, as we have discussed, via the Strait of Gibraltar, and further to the Indian Ocean via Suez Canal as well. The another important strait is Strait of Hormuz, and as you can see from the map here, the Strait of Hormuz is situated between two regions. One is the Persia, that ancient Persia, currently as we call it as Iran, and then On the south you have the Arabian Peninsula, and two countries are located here. One is the UAE, that is United Arab Emirates, and then on the top you have the Oman. So between Iran, UAE and Oman is your narrow water channel, as you can see from here, is what we call as Strait of Hormuz. Again, a very vital strategic choke point or a strategic strait. So if we talk about which water bodies that it connects, so in the east basically you have the Gulf of Oman, and in the west you have the Persian Gulf. So connecting these two water bodies, we have the Strait of Hormuz. So on the north coast lies Iran, as we have discussed, and the south coast UAE and Oman lies. One of the world's most strategically important choke point, especially if you look at the geopolitical conflict and tensions that occurs in these areas very frequently. We know that Iran and the Arabian countries are generally at confrontation with each other, and that is why it makes it one of the most volatile region of the world as well. Yet another critical point is the lifeline flow of oil from the Persian Gulf area. Basically, any oil that is coming out from countries such as Iran, Iraq, they have to pass by the Strait of Hormuz to be supplied to the oil dependent nations of the world. If you look at the volume of the oil, so a third of the world's liquefied natural gas, LNG, and almost 25% of total global oil consumption passes through the Strait of Hormuz. And it is precisely because of this region, you will see that major countries of the world, including US, UK, France, Israel, all countries all continuously keep watching this particular region, so that to make sure that the oil flow that is happening between the oil producing countries and oil dependent countries is not interrupted in case any such kind of conflict happen between the countries situated here. So this strait is closely monitored by US military and its allies, as we have discussed before. Now next in line is another strait nearby Gulf, this what you can say Strait of Hormuz, is Bab al-Mandab. Now Bab al-Mandab, if you look at first of all the map here, we can clearly see that here you have Mediterranean Sea. Through Mediterranean Sea, the ships enter via Suez Canal to again a narrow elongated sea, that is Red Sea, lying between Arabian Peninsula in the east and the African landmass with countries such as Egypt, Sudan, Eritrea and all in the west. Now Red Sea is further connected to Arabian Sea, and in the Arabian Sea you have a small gulf here that is called as Gulf of Aden. Gulf of Aden is situated between Yemen, that is part of Arabian Peninsula, and then you have the place in Africa here that is called as Horn of Africa. Horn of Africa is largely made up of 4 countries, that is you have Somalia, Ethiopia, Eritrea and Djibouti. So basically Bab al-Mandab, as you can see, is a narrow strait that connects Red Sea and Gulf of Aden. Also we can say that Bab al-Mandab is a strait that separates Arabian Peninsula from the Horn of Africa region. That is how geographically you can understand its location. Now Bab al-Mandab, basically it is an Arabic word which in English can be translated as Gate of Grief, and this is situated between this particular regions, as we have discussed before. It connects the Red Sea to Gulf of Aden, and located between the Red Sea and Indian Ocean. Bab al-Mandab is a bottleneck for sea traffic between the Mediterranean Sea and the Indian Ocean. If you look at the importance, economic importance of this strait, we can understand from this fact that estimated 3.3 million barrels of oil pass through the straits every day, out of world's total of about 43 million barrels per day. That means what we can say, that almost 20% to 25% of the world's oil supply has to pass through the Bab al-Mandab region. So basically, as you can see, Persian Gulf here, that means here you have the Strait of Hormuz and here you have the Bab al-Mandab. Both are very vital strait that is situated, one on the northern side of Arabian Peninsula and one on the southern side of. Now next we have the next modern strait that we have talked about is the Strait of Dover. So the Strait of Dover, also commonly called as Dover Strait, is a strait at the narrowest part of the English Channel. So if you look at the map here, you can clearly see in the east you have the European landmass where you have a country that is France, and in the western side you have the United Kingdom, and here you can clearly see that is nearby London. Then here you have Dover. So Dover is a city that is situated in United Kingdom, and on the France side you have a city that is called as Calais. So between Kalai and Dover is located your Dover Strait, and the entire channel here, as you can see, is basically referred as English Channel. In other way, English Channel is a narrow channel that also is separating. To the north you have another water body, that is North Sea, and to the south you have the Atlantic Ocean. Now the entire strait we talk about is within the territorial waters of France. Territorial waters basically is a concept that you will learn in maritime zones of the world that has been demarcated as per the United Nations Convention on Law of the Seas, which countries have signed, member countries of UN have signed in year 1982. And since it lies in the territorial waters of France and the United Kingdom, right of transit passes under UN clause, as we just have discussed. United Nations Convention on Law of Seas allows vessels of other nations also to move freely through the strait without taking prior permission either from the France or from the United Kingdom in that case. Now, most of the maritime traffic between the Atlantic Ocean and the North Sea and Baltic Sea passes through the Strait of Dover. So, actually it is a kind of tri-junction strait that connects three water bodies: Atlantic Ocean to the south, North Sea to the north, and Baltic Sea to the east of this particular region, as you can see from here. The next strait again is very important geographically also, that is called as Bering Strait. Now Bering Strait is a strait situated between the Pacific Ocean, as you can see from here, lying to the south, and then to the north you have the Arctic Ocean. If we talk about the land masses, this is the Bering Strait. So as you can see, to the west of Bering Strait you have the Eurasian continent, largely it is the Russia, and to the east of the Bering Strait you have the Alaska, that is the 50th state of USA that was bought by US from the Russia. So it is a strait between Pacific and Arctic, separating what we can say is the Chukchi Peninsula of the Russian Federation, as we have discussed, and the Seward Peninsula, that is part of Alaska here. The strait is named after a person called as Vitus Bering. Vitus Bering was a Danish explorer. Danish explorer means he belonged to Denmark, a country in Europe, in the service of the Russian Empire. And the most important point what you have to remember about the strait, that the international date line, that is the line that determines how the dates will change or where the dates will change on the earth, passes through the Bering Strait. That means if you are crossing the Bering Strait, or basically if you are crossing the Bering Strait from the, let us say, east to west, the day will change. Or if you are crossing the Bering Strait from west to east, then also the day and date will change. So if you are moving from east to west, you have to add 24 hours. And if you are moving from west to east, then you have to subtract 24 hours from whatever time you are crossing across. The last strait that we have discussed here is the Park Strait. Now Park Strait, all of you must be familiar, is situated between India and Sri Lanka, as you can see from the map here. More precisely, it is a strait located between the Tamil Nadu state of India, that is part of South India, and the Jaffna district, that is part of the Sri Lanka. Now it connects, if we talk about waterways, the Bay of Bengal, as you can see, situated to the northeast of the strait, and then we have the Park Bay, that is situated to the southwest part of the strait. So connecting Tamil Nadu and Jaffna of Sri Lanka, and separating Bay of Bengal, or connecting Bay of Bengal and Park Bay in the water bodies. It is not very wide strait. Its general width is somewhere between 40 to 85 miles, and the length is also about 85 miles. The strait is named after Robert Park, who was a governor of Madras during the British rule in India between year 1755 to 1763, and most recently the strait was in news because a project called as Setu Samudram Shipping Canal project was something that was announced by government, or something on which a discussion was going on. The reason is because if you look at this strait, as we have discussed in the beginning of the video, many straits are non-navigable because of presence of rocky shoals, stones, or the shallowness of the water, and that is why currently it is not possible for large ships to move via the Park Strait if they are moving from, let us say, Arabian Sea to the Bay of Bengal. And that is why this canal project was basically a proposal to draze out the rocks or the shoals of these areas to deepen the water level so that ships can easily pass via the Park Strait, and they will not have to go throughout around the Sri Lanka if they are moving from Arabian Sea to the Bay of Bengal. However, due to religious reasons as well as environmental reasons, this project did not take off, and that is the situation as of now as well. So that is all about this particular video. I hope you understood about what do we mean by term straits and what are the major important straits of the world. Thank you very much.